Oh, hi, everybody. My name is Matt Storrs, and welcome to Mattsplaining. On today's episode, I have an expert on who I'm very excited to speak with. Expert, please introduce yourself and tell us what you're an expert at.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name is Bailey Swilley. I am a performer, writer, and producer based in New York, and I am an expert on Sex and the City.
Fantastic. I am a big proponent of Sex in the City. I think that most of the time when people are having sex in rural areas, there's not as much access to some of the more fun aspects of the sex that they can have. So for instance, you have the date options. You have these, you can go to Applebee's, you can go to Chili's, but you can only go to Applebee's and Chili's so many times and for your dates. And eventually you're going to get into the position that I got in. I was in a large city at the time when I was dating, but I was going to the same ramen restaurant over and over again. And some of the dates were successful, some of them weren't. But the main issue was that the wait staff of the ramen restaurant started to get to know me too well, and they knew my order. They knew exactly how spicy everything was. And the same guy every Friday that I went on these dates, Thursday, Friday, sometimes you want to do the more casual Thursday date. He would come over, and I could tell just based on his presentation to me whether or not he thought it was going to work out. I didn't know him. I didn't know his first name, even though he introduced himself every single time. And I think that's the type of awkwardness that people run the risk of getting into when you're having sex in more rural areas. And I think that, if there was some sort of guide or like column that people had where, they could write in and, ask about their sexual issues or the changes that a man or a woman goes through as life goes on and the complexities of their relationships, I feel like that would be something really effective, potentially a dramatic, somewhat comedic that people could look into and really see themselves in the people that were presented in these narratives or these advices. Maybe you have somebody, a group of four plus people, each one of them with different personalities, and some might say like codependencies in these friendship relationships, how they support one another, but sometimes also support themselves in a position where, maybe talking to your friends isn't necessarily the best idea. Writing into an advice columnist isn't the best idea. Maybe going to therapy, finding a therapist that is best for you, might be a better sense. Sex therapist, even that has an actual degree as opposed to just a propensity to share everything about their love life and all of the different men or women that they've been seeing. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the city, quote unquote. And I think a lot of people, there's debate about what the city is. And I think, based on my experiences playing Pokemon Go and all of the things that are listed as the city here in New York, there's this Pokestop that I'm familiar with. It's the Carrie Bradshaw house. And I'm not familiar with Miss Bradshaw, but as I understand it, it's a very popular Pokestop. And so you can just stop by there. You can get your Snorlax, you can get your Jinx, you can get your various other Pokemon, usually Gen 1 Pokemon. And I think people really appreciate that because I don't know what historical figure Miss Bradshaw was, what she necessarily did. And that's my failing for not doing the research to find out the information about the Pokestop. But that leads me to say that I think that the city, outside of the general concept of what a city is, I think that most of the time people think of the city as New York, and there's all of these different interests. Maybe you meet somebody through going to the Carrie Bradshaw Pokestop, and that's how you find a romantic partner, or you go to whatever your special interest is, and then that you have for a couple weeks, you go to a pottery class or something like that, and then okay, we've met some people here, and that maybe it feels somewhat episodic of, oh, I met somebody at this thing, or my friend met somebody at this thing, and then they go off and they have this little adventure and they learn something about that person, but they also hopefully learn something about themselves. And I think that's what a city really provides for you when it comes to your sex life, is the opportunity to learn a lot more about you other than what your spiciness level is for the ramen that you're going to order. Now, Bailey, based on what you've heard so far, about how much of that would you say was accurate?
Honestly, I think pretty accurate. I think you're about 85%.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I really feel like you nailed the show.
Oh, there's a show?
Yes, what you described sounds like a concept.
Okay.
And I feel like it is a concept. Sex and the City at this point is a concept, a franchise, a way of life. And I feel like
Hmm.
you've hit so many of the components. Even just talking about the Carrie Bradshaw house, there is a Sex and the City tour. So you pretty much nailed that.
Oh, wow. Oh, I that's amazing. That probably explains why so many people were outside. I thought of it as a Pokestop, and that's how I find out all people come to New York for their tourist stuff. I learn everything I know about New York culture and history based on what's a Pokestop and what I can glean from that. So I guess that it would make more sense that they were on a tour.
Absolutely. I do think, like I said, it's a way of life. People are meeting each other at the Carrie Bradshaw house. Maybe they are going on dates after. And that would follow the arc of this very iconic series.
What got you, when did you first start getting into the series?
So I started watching Sex and the City when I was in college. I
Okay.
Sex and the City was forbidden fruit in my household during my
Hmm.
childhood. I was not allowed to watch HBO and was certainly not allowed to watch Sex and the City. But once I hit college age, I decided that it was time for me to enter these waters. I have seen so much of this. I've seen so many episodes of this series. I have watched season one, two, three, four, five, and six, part one and part two, multiple times. But I feel like you really did nail so many of the themes of this show, particularly the baseline of the show with the four different personalities. You absolutely nailed it. There are four personalities: Carrie, Samantha, Charlotte, Miranda.
Mhm.
And there is a column. You mentioned a column.
Mhm.
There is a column. It's not necessarily an advice column. It's more our protagonist Carrie spilling the beans on her friends and their sex lives.
I see. Okay. So it's more like a reflection as opposed to like a Dear Abby sort of thing.
Exactly. Like it's more like a weekly journal
I see.
based on whatever kind of week Carrie and the gals have had. But I must say, like, I get the impression that Carrie writes mostly from the perspective of her friends and less so of herself.
Mhm.
And that's such a Carrie thing to do. Carrie is a flawed, borderline narcissistic personality, and she doesn't want to reveal too much of herself. She'd much rather dine out on her friends' experiences, if that makes sense.
I see. And like, maybe I don't want to say that she is judgmental, but like maybe she could have a tendency to be a little bit, I'm going to say it, be judgmental of her friends or maybe some of their decisions. Would that be accurate?
She can be. The number one, I would say we have a Miranda. She went to Harvard Law and she
Mhm.
is a lawyer, but she is very judgmental. But I would say that Carrie has her moments of judgment as well,
See.
especially with, even though Carrie is technically a sex columnist, she does pass judgment on the most sexually free character, which is Samantha. She would be like our most liberated character for the time. I
Mhm.
think if we compare her to culture today, I don't think Samantha I don't think Samantha ranks that high on
Mhm.
sexually liberated, but for the time, for 1998 to 2004, Samantha is extremely sexually liberal, and there are moments that Carrie does judge her.
Mhm. And these characters, it sounds like they were together for quite some time. Do you feel that there was a lot of growth that they had as characters and like in their friendship?
But here's the thing. We are still with these characters today, believe it or not.
Really? Wow.
They have reemerged in today's society on a brand new franchise called And Just Like That.
Mm.
And so we can see exactly where these ladies are today. And there has been some growth. There has been a fallout. There was a friendship fallout between Carrie. Like I mentioned before, Carrie was really judgmental of Samantha, and perhaps Samantha had enough and she moved to London.
I see.
We're left with our remaining three, Carrie, Charlotte, and Miranda. And I think that the one takeaway that I have is that you never stop learning lessons. You can be 57 years old and still be falling for the wrong guy or gal. So the ladies are they're still learning and they're still growing.
But it sounds like these characters have a willingness to grow over time and face their mistakes. Have you found a lot of people that really identify with the characters, or have you built any friendships that are similar to the ones that have seen on the show?
Oh, absolutely. I would say that a lot of people, as much as people would like to hate on this show and hate on this series, everyone loves to compare themselves to the four. And I think many people, even though I did describe Carrie as like a narcissistic type, people, everyone wants to be a Carrie, or at least it
Mhm.
feels that way. And no one likes to be described as a Charlotte. And I've been asked who I am, and I'm pretty sure I'm a Miranda, but I am friends with a lot of Carries.
Mhm.
And not to say that I am friends with a lot of people who are selfish in the way that Carrie is, but I have a lot of friends who are pretty like carefree and fun and silly in the way that Carrie is.
I see.
And I think that my role is to be more of the grounded person, more of the mother role, which Miranda does seem to fall into a bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it sounds to me maybe the four characters are archetypes, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And similar to the Zodiac and other things like that, to really get down and break down whose personality is, saying these people are Carries, but maybe they're a Charlotte Rising or something like that.
Oh,
Or
absolutely. That's definitely possible as well.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, fantastic. And if you were getting into Sex and the City for the first time, do you think that going back to the very beginning of the series is a good option, or do you think that starting with just like that is a good thing? Do you feel like you need to know all the canon to appreciate it?
I think a great place to start is season three of the original series.
Hmm.
I've got to be honest with you. If you go back all the way to season one, there's a lot of kinks that they really need to work through. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it depends on what you're going to the show for, right?
Hmm.
So if you're going to the show looking for fashion,
Hmm.
I would not go to season one.
Okay. The budget wasn't there for the fashion.
No, the fashion was not there. The fashion did not become a character in the show until I want to say till midway season two.
Mhm.
And that's when we really started to see things get elevated. I would not start with And Just Like That. I would not, and to be honest with you, I would not even go to And Just Like That unless you really care for these women as deeply as I do.
Okay.
Like, I will follow these women into the pits of hell, but that's not for everybody. That's the journey I've chosen for myself. But you've got to do some soul searching before you commit to And Just Like That, to be honest with you.
Mhm. That makes sense. What do you think that you've taken away from the show? Like, how do you think it's shaped you and what you do now?
I think that, like we had talked about before, the idea of growth, it
Mhm.
does feel like, yeah, you're never done learning lessons. I think people often get through their 20s and enter their 30s and they're like, "Oh, I'm 30 now, so I'm grown and I know everything and I learned everything." And this show really proves that is not the case. We make mistakes every day, every week, and if you continue to learn from them, then that's all that matters. And I do really love that aspect of the show. I also really love the concept of friendship. I think
Mhm.
something that you hit on before was a lot about dating in the city.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, the show really is about female friendship. And these women, they're really there for each other through thick and thin. They are there for each other through an unexpected pregnancy. Another woman has breast cancer.
Mhm.
Another woman has fertility issues. Another woman has financial issues. I'll let you guess which one. But I think that's also like a big theme that has been important to me. And I will say, like, when I first moved to the city, I moved here almost 15 years ago and I was kind of lonely, didn't know a lot of people. And I would watch this show like on my phone
Mhm.
on my like 40-minute subway ride.
Yeah.
And so These ladies, I feel like I know them. So that's why I say that I would follow their stories wherever they decided to go, just because at this point they feel like such a prominent part of my life, as sad or as sweet as that may sound.
Yeah, I think that sounds more sweet than sad. I think that having this model to build your life on and then build your relationships on and everything like that sounds very sweet. There can be positive friendships and these things will come in time. I think that's a very sweet and beautiful anecdote.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Of course. This has been so insightful and so helpful. If people wanted to learn more about you or more about Sex and the City, where would you recommend that they go?
To learn more about Sex and the City, you should check it out on, it's streaming. I think it's streaming on multiple platforms right now, especially Max.
Hmm.
And if you want to learn more about me, please follow me at Hey Bailey, HeyBailay. I have some really exciting shows coming up. I'm doing a show that's very personal to me called Give Me a Sign. I'll be doing it April 1st at Caveat in New York, and then I'll also be performing it at the Yellow Bicycle Theater in Philadelphia on April 5th and 6th. And so you can find more information about that on my Instagram page.
Fantastic. Those are going to be absolutely wonderful. I think people will really enjoy it if they decide to check it out.
Thank you. That's so kind.
Fantastic. My name is Matt Storrs, and this has been Mattsplaining.